I guess my best advice would be we have to be vocal about this. If we destigmatize the idea of burnout, if we destigmatize the idea of mental health or substance abuse issues, then we can deal with it in a productive way. But as long as we continue to be quiet about it, it will continue to be that annoying CLE that we have to do once a year that nobody really wants to do.
So welcome everyone. Today is June 2nd, 2022. This is the Southern Nevada Association of Women Attorneys, Ethics and Alcoholism in the Legal Profession, CLE. We've got a great panel today. We have board members on. We've got Laura Johns Bullhouse on. We have past President Jory Spangler on. We have past President Kathleen Poshton on. We have past Treasurer Mary Chapman on. We have past President Stacy Rocheleau on. Oh, if I'm missing anyone, I am so sorry. Please raise your hand or say hello, wave hello. We also have just Judiciary here, I think is Judge, oh my gosh, Roohani. I'm so sorry, Judge Roohani. I don't see any other judges. I don't think I saw any on the list for today. Oh no, I'm sorry. I think we have Judge Cellini on. I apologize. I do see Judge Cellini on. Thank you for attending with us. Welcome to our members. Welcome to our male members.
Judge Rocheleau.
Judge Rocheleau.
Judge Rocheleau was on. I'm so sorry. Past President and Judge Rocheleau. Apologies. I did mention her as a past president. Thank you. So again, welcome to our members, our male members, our sponsors, our non-members, and law students and those from abroad. All right, so announcements. S.N.A.W.A, of course, is always having things coming up. Next week, Tuesday, June 7th, 2022 at 5:15, we have happy hour with their honors. That is at Atomic Liquors on East Fremont Street, and that is free to members. You can RSVP to Nadia Kroll, Judge Kroll, and at Clark County Courts. US. That is free to members. Again, registration is required. We have 40 judges confirmed and a whole list of wonderful, wonderful sponsors of that. Thank you guys so much for that. July 14th, we have an in-person diversity ethics panel CLE luncheon. That is a panel featuring judges Monica Trujillo, Biddy Yeager, Tiara Jones, moderated by judges Alf and Kroll. There are registration requirements for that. Go to S.N.A.W.A.com. On August 4th, we're going to have in person at the Las Vegas Culinary Academy a legislative update. That's August 4th. And that'll be $30 for members, $50 for non-members. And that, again, will be up on S.N.A.W.A.com. On August 16th, we have margaritas and manicures. That is at Litigation Services. We did that, I think, the year before COVID, and then, of course, COVID killed that. So we're bringing that back this year. That's August 16th, and you can contact Karen Eddington at Litigation Services. That's K. Eddington at litigationservices.com. That one is, again, free to members. September 14th, then, a very important date. Save the date, and if you have any need if you want to be a sponsor or make a tribute for our 2022 Miriam Shearing Gala honoring judges Alf and Sturman at the Regional Justice Center, please let us know, and you can contact Alex McLeod. That's Alexandra at nettlesmorris.com for more information about that. And then last but not least, announcements. We have a wine and cheese tasting. That'll be October 13th at Valley Cheese and Wine, another event that is free to members. You can contact Alex McLeod, Alexandra at nettlesmorris.com, or Marjorie Huff at courtroomproven.com, mhuff at courtroomproven.com. So that's another free to members event. Today, though, we are here for our Ethics and Alcoholism in the Legal Profession CLE. We have a panel approved for a half a credit of substance abuse and a half a credit of ethics. We will have our Nevada judges editing the video today so that we can offer this to members later to watch later. For alternative format, please do enter your bar numbers in the chat. We will save the chat and use that for reporting. So please enter your names and bar numbers. That includes for our presenters. Please include your names and bar numbers in the chat so that we can report that to the bar. I am going to pin our presenters. Let's see. All right. So now we have everyone on our panel pinned. This is our esteemed panel. Today we have Judge Ellie Roohani in District Court Department 11. We have Kristina Kuzemka with the Nevada Bar, the Lawyers Concerned for Lawyers, Nevada Lawyers Assistance Program, and of course is a mediator over at ARM. We have Maria Gall, who is a partner in the Litigation and Securities Enforcement and Corporate Governance Litigation Divisions at Ballard's Bar. Ling Chu is a solo practitioner, does tax controversy, estates and probate and real estate matters. And then myself today, I am the moderator. I am a solo practitioner. I mostly do landlord tenant matters and sit on the board of the Clark County Law Foundation and volunteer for S.N.A.W.A as well. So Judge Roohani had the wonderful idea to, rather than go through a long introduction of who we are, say why it is that we are passionate about presenting about mental health and substance use issues and why we like to be here today. So Judge, why don't you go ahead and go first?
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I know that all of us presenters are super excited about today's program. The reason I had this idea to have everybody talk about how substance abuse has touched their life or why they're passionate about this is because the more I talk to people, I realize that everybody has somebody. And so for me, my somebody is my brother, who is a recovering addict. And part of the reason that I don't do a lot of substances at all or drink is because of the very strong history of addiction in my family. So it is something that has touched my family for a very long time. And I've had to go through a lot of therapy to be able to manage some of the mental health issues that come with dealing with an addict. And so I think that part of our program today is unique in the sense that we're going to talk about what to do when you're not the addict. And so I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to be on this panel. I'm looking forward to talking to all of you.
Thank you, Judge Roohani. Christine?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for putting this on. This is really a great topic and a nice incorporation of both living with folks who are suffering under substance use disorders or mental health issues, and then those of us who are in recovery. I'm passionate about this because I'm a woman in long-term recovery. If I don't drink or drug between now and August 18th, it'll be 38 years for me of continuous recovery. And for that, I'm really grateful. I'm passionate about this because I've seen colleagues and friends die. I've seen them end up in prison, and it's frustrating. And I think it's really good to get the word out as far as what resources are available to people who are suffering with mental health issues or substance use disorders, and also those of us who are double winners. I have a grandfather who died of alcoholism. That's what we called it back in the day. It is now a substance use disorder. My mother's in recovery. I think she's got like 44 years. So between us, we're headed toward a century of recovery. And I will tie it up with this. I have a good friend I do CLEs with, Dr. Johanna O'Flaherty. And she talks about if that which is not transformed is transferred. And Judge Roohani mentioned that she's got a long history in her family. A lot of us do. So it's a great opportunity to transform the disease so that it's not transferred into further generations. Thanks.
Thanks, Chris. Maria?
Thanks. And thanks so much to S.N.A.W.A for putting this together. Such an important topic, especially as we're coming out of 2 years of a pandemic where attorneys and women were in many ways disproportionately affected by the circumstances of the pandemic. And frankly, as we all know, attorneys and women attorneys are continuing to feel the disproportionate consequences now that courts are opening back up and trials are going forward of what the pandemic has rendered on us. For me, this is a topic I'm really passionate about because I'm really passionate about education and mentoring younger attorneys. And as we're going to discuss today, we're going to see that substance abuse, and particularly alcoholism and alcohol abuse, disproportionately affects younger attorneys in the profession, and in many ways disproportionately affects the space of the profession I'm in, which is a larger law firm. I have seen too many younger attorneys come into a very, an inherently very stressful profession, inherently very confrontational profession, and they burned out way too quick. And in the process of trying not to burn out, they often turn to substance abuse to help them manage the stressors of this profession. And so I think it's important, as we're going to discuss today, it's important for us to know that we're not alone. It's important for us to know that there is no shame in getting help. There is no shame in seeking allies in this. There is no shame in seeking mentors to help you if you do have an issue, or even if you don't have an issue, to help you before an issue even arises. And so I'm just really honored to be on this panel, and really pleased that this very important topic is continuing to be discussed amongst our profession.
Thanks, Maria. Ling?
I'm very much passionate about the science behind how addiction works, largely because I feel like a lot of the conversation surrounding it is kind of based on this personal responsibility. You are the reason why people are addicted, and it's not environmental. It's not something that more people are susceptible to compared to other people. So I think having the hard facts and the science and studying that and discussing that is extremely important, so people don't feel like because they have become addicted to a substance, or because circumstances have driven them toward a substance, that is their fault and they have failed. I think it's really important to have that conversation, because I don't know about you, but I feel like lawyers really, really don't like failing, and we have a problem with that. So I think discussing it more and more would be the right path to take.
Awesome. Thanks, Ling. As for myself, I come from a background of childhood trauma, pretty severe childhood trauma. In 2011, right after I took the bar exam, I had a pretty significant psychotic mental breakdown. And then about 7 years later, my mentor, Judge Ellie Davis, committed suicide. And after that, I realized, and really into 2020, and COVID and those kinds of things, my drinking definitely took a step that I didn't really like. And so I stopped drinking in November of 2020, and I gratefully haven't drunk again, and I don't want to, you know what I mean? So both my mental health issues and things like that, and just what I have seen, how alcohol affects those in my own life and in my own and other people and in my own life, I really want to make sure that we are having these conversations that these wonderful attorneys and Judge Roohani, are willing to have today. So it is an honor for me as well to be here and to be able to present to everyone here in the room, and to have this go out to our members so that they can get their credits, but also really have this great conversation that we're having today. So thank you all for being here. And with that, we will get started. So for our data and science-driven members, that's where we'll start first. So in 2016, there was a study conducted by the Hazelden Betty Ford Foundation and the American Bar Association Commission on Lawyer Assistance Programs that talked about the levels of problem drinking and other behavioral health problems in the legal profession. And so Maria will first give us sort of the data on that study. Maria, what does that study reveal?
Sure. So this is a pretty far-reaching study. There were almost 13,000 licensed and employed attorneys who self-reported on this study on alcohol use, on drug use, on symptoms, and then mental health symptoms of depression, anxiety, and stress. And that breakdown, just so you know, was about 53% male, 46% female. Although the sample predominantly included Caucasians, in other words, it wasn't a very racially diverse sample size. The results of that, just concentrating on alcohol use, was that a little over 20% of the self-reported participants in the study scored at a level consistent with what's termed problematic drinking. That's significant. That's 1 in 5, right? That means more likely than not, if you are even at a small firm, one of your colleagues, your attorney colleagues, is going to have an issue with problematic drinking. And it's also significant, not only in and of itself, but when you compare that to the larger, what you would consider the highly educated workforce, you're almost, not quite, but you're almost at double the score for the workforce, which came in at a little under 12%. Some other interesting things, and what's relevant to this group, is that women, there were more women who scored at problematic drinking than men did. Some other things, if you look at the data, because this kind of informs us, okay, problematic drinking, if you think about the environmental factors that could lead to problematic drinking, right? What the study shows is that the manifestations appear to start actually in law school. And then they sort of peak within the first 15 years of practice, with 44% of the people who reported with problematic drinking reported that within the first 15 years of completing law school. And then after 15 years, those numbers dip down to about 15%. By the way, that's also consistent with the age groups of problematic drinking within that attorney space, which is it tends to peak when you're 30 years or younger, and then it starts decreasing between 31 and 40. The numbers dip down to 26. And then when you get above 40, there's even a further decline. And that also is consistent with experience in practicing, with the numbers peaking when you've practiced at 10 years or less at close to 30%. That dips down significantly to 20% when you're 11 to 20 years. And then after 20 years, it decreases even more. And so, you know, the data to be drawn from those numbers is that, you know, while overall across the profession, you know, we have this, you might consider 1 in 5 issue of problematic drinking, but that problematic drinking really peaks in the younger years and with less experience. And so I think it's really important when we're talking about this topic that we start the discussion earlier. That we consider starting this discussion in law school. And I know that in my law school, we had to attend a 1-hour course on the effects of alcoholism in the profession. However, that's a 1-hour course. And what's not being discussed, and this could have changed, of course, since I went to law school 2003 to 2006, and this could have changed in that time, but there's not repeated conversations about alcoholism, other than, you know, I remember the most prevalent conversation being, don't get a DUI, or you may not be able to take the bar, or you may not pass the bar, or you may not pass the ethical portions of the bar because of your DUI. But we really need to be talking about problematic drinking and use of alcohol, I think, much beyond that very narrow scope. So anyways, that's what the data tends to show. If you're interested in the larger study and the data from the study, feel free to email me. I'm happy to send it to whoever wants.
Thanks, Maria. We also, in the materials that I popped in the chat and were emailed around, and will go around after as well, there is the data from the Betty Ford study and a link to the Betty Ford website as well. So Ling, you know, you talked about being interested in the science, and of course, you know, it's really about the neuroscience and all of that. So tell us, you know, what it is that we should know about our brains and how substances work on our brains.
So basically, a lot of it has to do with how our dopamine receptors work. What happens with a substance abuse addicted brain is that your brain becomes blunted over time from the actual use of the substance. So in the initial hit will give people the higher dopamine levels, but with each successive hit, the brain becomes number and number to the dopamine hit, which requires additional substance abuse. They've actually done a really interesting and cool MRI map of what an addicted brain looks like in terms of how many neurons and dopamine receptors light up versus what a just a regular non-addictive brain looks like. So the interesting thing about that is you can actually now, there are studies and treatments where it maps how your brain is reacting to the dopamine hits to try and help treat the substance abuse. So what they'll do is they'll do a PET scan and they'll see what lights up, and over time they'll be able to actually empirically look at how people are recovering from the actual addiction. So that part is fairly interesting. The issue with specific to lawyers, though, is that the discussion around substance abuse tends to center around alcohol and drugs, but increasingly the statistics show that more and more people are actually getting equally addicted to prescribed stimulants and stimulants that aren't considered necessarily Schedule I type of drugs. So that's something to keep an eye on, I think, and also to discuss, because people aren't necessarily all lumping themselves into one category, or if they are thinking they might be, they'll look at the list and they'll say, oh, I'm not addicted to any of these things. I totally don't count. And I think that's a discussion that needs to be had.
Absolutely. No, I agree. And we have a comment we will get to, Shannon. But Christine, do you have anything to add at this point?
I do. I would address a couple things. Maria mentioned starting in law school, the State Bar of Nevada now provides a therapy benefit to all law students at Boyd. We also work with Dean Wall there, and we do not CLEs for them. We do presentations and professional responsibility classes, and we also talk to the incoming students. In regards to Ling's focus on science, substance use disorders are in the diagnostic and statistical manual. It is a disease, just like diabetes. So when we talk about it being a moral issue, it is not. And it's in the dopamine, looking at brains, I've looked at that study, like they look at brains with cocaine and brains with meth. And having been a former criminal defense attorney, when I had clients who were addicted to meth, it takes a meth brain about a year to get back to the neuroplasticity that it had before it was using meth. So if you're talking to a client or someone addicted to meth in the first 90 days, they're likely not firing on all cylinders. So are you really being effective or helping them to resolve a matter? Finally, I would say, as to the prescription issue, big incidence of that in our profession as well, through pain management. And we all are probably aware of the opioid crises. Sometimes people have a difficult time admitting that they have an issue with it because they can say, I have this prescription here. My doctor prescribed these for me. I don't have a problem. Go pound sand, basically. In addition to drugs and alcohol, there can be addiction to sex, gambling, internet. Certainly in the past 10 to 15 years, that's been studied more. And that's all I have to add. Thanks.
All for now, anyway. So there was a question about gambling addiction. I think a lot of these conversations also do apply. I think that we could say, some of the neuroscience, of course, the reward system that gambling sets up is similar to the reward system that you receive when you're, using substances and things like that. You know what I mean? And of course, the resources available in this program, that we talk about are also available to anyone with a gambling problem as well. So although we are talking mostly about alcohol and substances and things like that, it is something that would also apply to gambling. So something we did plan to talk about today and acknowledge for our members and everyone else is, of course, the stress, the incredible stress, particularly our trial attorneys are under right now. And of course, there are administrative orders that require a lot of trials to be happening, and the judges and the attorneys are just completely stressed out. So I think some of the questions are, why is it like this? You know what I mean? So that would be something, if Judge Roohani, you can comment on why it's like this. And then, how is it being recognized by the judges, if at all?
So I'll start by saying that not all of the judges agree with me. Not all of my colleagues agree with me with respect to the way that I feel about it. So I want to start with saying that it's my personal opinion that we should not sacrifice human beings for arbitrary goals that we set up for ourselves with respect to case numbers. Those goals are goals that we made up, and we can change those goals. There's nobody, no higher power that's going to strike us down if we don't meet those goals. And in my department, at least, I'm not willing to have anybody burn out or hurt themselves or fall into depression or addiction just because we need to have some back-to-back trials. If I get in trouble for it, I'll get in trouble for it. But not all my colleagues agree. I think that the sentiment is people very polarized on two sides with respect to the bench, which is the AO is working, we are reducing our numbers, it is doing exactly what it intended to do. There's a lot of put up or shut up, which I don't necessarily agree with. And then there's, the folks who are like me, who are pretty vocal on the other side, which is, you set aside the judge's burnout. Let's talk about the attorney burnout. People who've been in trial nonstop constantly since January. This is not sustainable. This is not benefiting anyone. I don't know if it's going to change. I do know that with Judge Weiss coming in, this is something that some of us judges have spoken to him about, and he'll have to make some really important decisions once he does become chief. But Shannon, I wanted to address the second part of your question, which is, there's, I think, a fear, and it's not just in the legal community, I think it's just generally with mental health and burnout, there is a fear to talk about it because we will be seen as weak, or we will be seen as not being, the badass that we want to be, or whatever that internal motivation is. And the only thing that I could say is if we are not open and honest about it, there is no way that a judge can read your mind. There's no way that there's no way we can change if we don't know that there's a problem. So if it's something that you are not comfortable, putting on jabs, reach out to opposing counsel. Don't have an ex parte communication, but let the court know it's okay. We can address it. At least in my department, I'm happy to address it in a way that's discreet. But if we are not open and honest about it, because the reality is probably the other side is feeling some of that pressure as well. I know that I know the next question that Alexis is going to ask me, so I'm just going to roll right into it, which is talking about burnout. What is burnout? So burnout is an actual recognized psychological phenomenon that has been written about extensively in the psychological community. And it's characterized by emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and a reduced sense of personal accomplishment. And so that emotional exhaustion can look like somebody being overly emotional, getting, crying at the drop of a hat, that type of thing, or also just completely detaching and not having any emotional affect because it's just too overwhelming. That depersonalization is that detachment, which is you are not feeling important within your work, you're not feeling engaged with your work. And then also that reduced sense of personal accomplishment can happen because you're not doing your best work because you are burnt out. So this is it's a vicious cycle that if we don't nip it in the bud and we don't actually address it appropriately, it will continue and it will continue to get worse. And we have to think about why this happens more in our profession than many other professions. And it's because people come to us to fix their problems. They come to us on their worst possible day, or when they have an issue, or when they have something that needs to be fixed. And they say, okay, now fix my problem. And as people who I would hope got into this profession because we want to help others, we internalize that. And so there's another actual diagnosable psychological phenomenon called secondary traumatic stress that is not unlike post-traumatic stress disorder. And secondary traumatic stress happens largely in work-related situations. This is exposure to extremely or traumatically stressful events, and that includes those that are felt by others that we are internalizing because we are having close conversations with these people about those problems. And the symptoms look a lot like PTSD. So they look like being afraid, the courage that you might have typically to go to trial, you don't have that courage anymore. You don't have that fight in you. So that fear, having some difficulty sleeping, which of course then leads into, well, I'll just have a drink, and then one drink becomes two. And so there's a little bit of this going on. Having images of the upsetting event pop into your mind. I think this happens a lot with our criminal practitioners, a lot with our prosecutors and defense attorneys working on really, really difficult cases, especially now that after the pandemic, for 2 years, we weren't doing a whole lot of anything. And now we are being bombarded with difficult things on a daily basis, and avoiding things that remind you of the event. And when you avoid things that remind you of your work, you're avoiding your work. And the way you're coping with that is typically by turning to things that will numb you, that are not proper coping mechanisms. So I guess my best advice would be, we have to be vocal about this. If we destigmatize the idea of burnout, if we destigmatize the idea of mental health or substance abuse issues, then we can deal with it in a productive way. But as long as we continue to be quiet about it, it will continue to be that annoying CLE that we have to do once a year that nobody really wants to do. And that's not how it should be.
Right. I agree. I wanted to just note, of course, that Andrew Craner mentioned that the Board of Governors for the State Bar is meeting with chief judges to try to address some of these issues as well. And it does seem maybe that, some of the current administration and things are going to address it, hopefully. So hopefully, again, these conversations can continue. And also I want to make a comment. I mean, of course, post-traumatic stress disorder, I come from that place myself of being a child of post-traumatic stress, right? And I think a significant number of attorneys come in to the profession with existing issues like that. You know what I mean? We are not, some of us come in, we're all very high achieving, we're very intelligent. We come in with our own neuroses and things like that. And some of us maybe don't even recognize fully that we have those until we are now receiving secondary trauma from our cases, and then are overloaded by things that we didn't even realize necessarily were there, but maybe a case is bringing it up or something like that, or just the stress of the job, or, something else in our lives also adds on to it, a divorce, and any number of things, a job change, a move, that kind of stuff, right? So, I think that that's something that I always like to remind people of, is that, we do also come into it a little bit, maybe high strung at times, right? So we are, for that reason, more prevalent in our substance use disorders and our mental health issues and things like that. So the next questions become, how do you know if you have a problem? One thing that I was really interested in is this MAST test. It's a Michigan alcohol screening test. It's a self-administered test, a yes or no test developed in 1971. It's one of the oldest, most accurate alcohol screening tests available, and apparently it reports to a 98% accuracy. And so it can help you decide if you have a problem or not. And that is included in the materials. So if anyone wants to do a self-test and decide if they want, if they maybe have a problem, they can take that test. Judge, you sort of mentioned a good rule of thumb as you understand it about drinking, and if, it's a problem or not. What is your understanding?
So this is actually a rule that the psychologists use to ascertain whether somebody has some problem drinking habits, and it's called the 0, 1, 2, 3 rule. So if what they tell people is that you should have 0 drinks if you're going to be doing anything important. So that means you're signing a contract, you're going to be driving, you're going to be going to court. You should be having no drinks before that happens. You should pace yourself and only have 1 drink an hour. You should only be having 2 drinks or 2 nights a week that you are drinking, and you can have 3 drinks on any one special occasion. So it's the 0, 1, 2, 3 rule. And so then you're going to ask me, well, what is the equivalent of 1 drink? So I actually have that answer for you as well. A standard drink is 1 beer, or a 4-ounce glass of wine, or 1 ounce of liquor. So if you apply that metric to the 0, 1, 2, 3 rule, that should keep you at a point where you are not falling, getting close to the line of an alcohol or substance abuse disorder.
And Christine, what would you add to this conversation?
I would add to this conversation that for someone who's got a substance use disorder, 1 drink is too many, and 1,000 is not enough. And I would ask for clarification too. I mean, as an alcoholic, when I hear 1 drink an hour, does that mean I can drink for 13 hours and have 13 drinks? then I see this thing at the bottom that says 3 drinks on any one special occasion. So am I limited to 3 drinks? I mean, leave it to a lawyer. Can I have 1 per hour and have 24? That's where I go. And if you've got an issue with alcohol, normal people don't ask these questions. They don't think about, I'm going to just drink on all days that end in Y. I'm going to drink only for vacations. I'm going to agree to resign if ever drunk on the job. Alcoholics and addicts rationalize and justify our behavior. I'll speak for myself because I can't pronounce anyone else. But we go to great lengths to justify and blame our disease on others because we don't want to give it up. I mean, it's the only disease I know of that tells you don't have it, and that, as Ling mentioned, your brain is like hijacked by these things, and that's what I would add. And I just wanted to loop back real quick to the vicarious and secondary trauma. When this CLE started, I just got a notification that the State Bar sent out a notice reminding attorneys and judges of our therapy benefit in light of the Uvalde tragedy. That is vicarious and secondary trauma that we experience, whether we're hearing witnesses, looking at photographs. If you have kids, you may have been panicked when you heard about that shooting if your children were at school. And so it's a great thing to do for yourself to just talk with an objective person if you're having difficulty around that or any other issue. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Christine. I'm really glad that we have that opportunity, of course. So now we'll get into some of the ethics stuff, and that's really the reporting obligations. And this is an interesting part of the conversation that I hadn't really heard until we had these panel meetings. So I'm excited to sort of hear more about it for everyone. So really what are some practical tips, and first, what is the rule, of course, and then practical tips of how to disclose if an attorney is impaired in court. So Judge, if you want to go over the rule and then those tips.
Sure. So the rule that applies here, the rule that imposes the duty to report is Rule 8.3. And the 3 things that you need to know about that rule and when it's triggered is you have to have actual knowledge that a violation of the rules has happened, and it raises a substantial fitness question as to that attorney's performance. And so if you have those 3 things, you must report. So what does that reporting look like? Or maybe you have 2 of them and you're like, I don't want to, be too wishy-washy about this, and I don't want to play too fast and loose with my clients' rights. So there's a lot of different options on what you can do. Obviously, you can request a break or you can request a continuance. If you're depending on the judge that you're standing in front of, that may or may not be helpful. You can talk to the lawyer if you can. The advice here is you should be direct with them. Don't beat around the bush. Tell them exactly what you think the problem is. You should be compassionate about it and do it in a non-judgmental way, which is, I have a concern that you are drinking too much. I understand that this might be a problem for you, and you're not doing it in a way where like you're saying, well, this is really bad and you should change your behavior or something like that. So if you're doing that, then it may not go well. I mean, no promises that it'll go well, but if you're going to have the conversation, that's how you should do it. You can discreetly inform the court. That could be asking to approach. You could let the clerk know. You can ask for a conference back in chambers. It's more important for us to obviously preserve the record and preserve the proceedings than it is just to proceed on a case where somebody is not acting with substantial fitness. You can contact the Nevada Lawyers Assistance Program or the Lawyers Concern for Lawyers Program. I have as an asterisk on that, or you can just call Christine. Christine is a extremely valuable resource. She's happy to take our calls whenever, and she can put us in touch with the right people and the services that the State Bar can offer. If you know a mental health professional, you can certainly contact a mental health professional depending on the relationship that you have with the other person. You obviously may have possible reporting obligations under 8.3, but if you have any further questions or what you might want to do, there's an ABA formal opinion on this. It's 03-431, and it was issued on August 8th, 2003. It gives you all sorts of different options, but I've kind of run through all of them. The judges have actually a couple of different options that we've sort of gathered anecdotal evidence of what some of the judges have been doing. We can just ask counsel if there's an impairment. Obviously, we try to do that in a discreet way, in a not embarrassing way. We can force you to test. We can ask you to submit to a breathalyzer or to a drug test. We can force a continuance of the matter to preserve a client's rights. And if we do confirm use, then we have a duty to report. So there's ways to do it in a non-reporting type of fashion, and there's ways to do it in a reporting type of fashion, but there's a lot of options that the judges do have.
Thank you for that. And then let's see if we get to maybe Maria next. So as a supervising attorney, what is your obligation and what rule is applicable in that case?
So the rule that's applicable is Rule 5.1, which speaks directly to the responsibilities of partners, managers, and supervisory lawyers, including those. You may not hold the title of partner or manager, but if you effectively have a supervisory role, in my view, Rule 5.1 is triggered. And what Rule 5.1 piggybacks on is Rule 1.16 primarily, which under subsection A1 and 2 basically says, like, look, if your physical or mental condition materially impairs, and what's important is the term materially impairs your ability to represent the client, you can't represent the client. And then when you go to Rule 5.1, as a managing attorney, you have a responsibility to the client and to the profession to ensure that those who you are supervising adhere to the rules, including Rule 1.16. In practice, this is incredibly difficult to apply. I've had junior attorneys come to me when they have had issues, and they feel comfortable enough to me to report, but they don't feel comfortable enough for me to share the issue with firm management. I mean, as I always say, I'm just a partner in my firm. I own like an eyelash of this horse. There's partnership and there's leadership. And a lot of times to get people the help that they need, I need to be able to share and talk to leadership. And it's really to protect the career of that person, because no matter what, you're right, like there's FMLA and there are protections where you can leave the firm for 2 weeks to go detox or to get the treatment you need or just to take a break. But it will be, there will be eyebrows raised, like in reality. And so in my view, we have these responsibilities. They're incredibly difficult to put into practice. And I think as a threshold issue, we've got to destigmatize this, because that's the barrier that every young attorney I see faces. They think they're alone. They think they're the only one. They think none of their colleagues that they have this problem. And they think if they, disclose this, that it's going to be an issue for them in their career, not realizing that if they continue on this path, they're going to have much larger issues down the road. And so I don't have great solutions other than I would encourage the people who are partners and managing attorneys to be compassionate, to listen, and to create a safe space for the people who work with you and for you to come to you and talk to you. And if you can think of creative solutions that will work for everyone and to help the person get the help that they need, I would encourage you to do that. But at the end of the day, I'm sorry to say, because of the stigmatization at the outset, I don't have great solutions.
Sure. So it sounds like our partners could use some partners could use assistance in that regard, but also as a younger attorney, finding a good mentor. I know even for me, even though my own mentor ended up having problems of her own, having a really good mentor in my large firm at the time that I had my own issues was critical for me to make sure that, my career, I was fine, And ultimately, the question comes up, if it is revealed that I have an issue, is my career over? No, I think the answer is no. If everyone on this panel could agree, the answer to that is no. I think what really matters to anyone is that you're getting help and you're taking care of yourself so you can do the best job possible for yourself and your clients, right? So last, I think we'll move on. There is a case in the materials about what happens when a judge is impaired, but I want to get to the next bit about, because this is really important that not everyone really talks about, is navigating others' addictions. So of course, we're not only dealing with our own addictions, but navigating someone else's addiction is a big deal and a difficult process. And so we want to talk about some of that. So I think the data about the effects of substance abuse on others is in the materials as well. But Judge Roohani, if you can comment on that, and then of course, into how we deal with that. What are your comments on dealing with others' addictions and how it affects you?
Sure. So we know that substance abuse touches everybody in some way, shape, or form. So on average, one addict will affect 7 to 10 other people, whether it's their loved one, whether it's their colleague, someone supervising them, or otherwise. We also know that children of alcoholics are 4 times more likely to become addicts themselves. So if you have addiction in your family, it's important to be hypervigilant about it and not just sweep it under the rug, deal with it head on. So what can you do if you're not the addict? You are the loved one of the addict, you are the colleague of an addict, this is your friend, somebody that you see. The first and most important thing, it seems counterintuitive, is to take care of yourself, because you have to put your own oxygen mask on before you can help anyone else. And the difficulty becomes when you're dealing with an addict is there's a lot of gaslighting. There's a lot of, you don't love me if you don't do. There's a lot of enabling that becomes really easy to do. And so if you are not actively taking care of yourself, then you are never going to be able to help that other person when they are ready to get help. And you should get help for yourself. And this is like speaking from firsthand experience. Having an addict in the family is emotionally traumatizing. You feel like you're living with a terrorist all the time. You feel on edge. You're afraid to leave your things out because they might steal your money to go and buy drugs or whatever it might be. That's a very difficult way to live. And it's important for us to take care of ourselves, especially when our profession requires us to take care of others. So don't be afraid to go take advantage of the state bar programming to get those services, or find a therapist, someone that you can talk to that is a trained mental health professional who can help you get through this. And then of course, there's other programs. There's open AA meetings, there's Al-Anon therapy, obviously EAP programs that our various institutions offer to us. But in your materials, there is a survey, and it's called the Mindful Self-Care Scale. It takes about 8 to 10 minutes to do tops. And I even did it myself just to make sure that I wasn't going to tell you to do something that's going to take a ton of time out. But it's enlightening because it measures 6 areas that are really clinically proven to show what a person who is not burned out and is taking care of themselves and is in a good mental place, these are the things that these people are going to score high on. I will admit to you, I've scored high on exactly one of those and then like really low on one. So those are physical care, taking care of yourself, making sure you're eating well and exercising, supportive relationships, making sure that others are there to support you, that you have someone to talk to, mindful awareness, that's being aware of what you are doing and how it's affecting others, but also are you taking the time to process things? Self-compassion and purpose, it's the only one that I scored high on, and that's feeling satisfied in your work and feeling like you're making a difference in the world. Mindful relaxation, that's the actual meditation portion and decompression portion of our lives. And then supportive structure, and that's both in terms of our work and our personal life. So take the 8 to 10 minutes to do it. The great part about it is they will send you recommendations of things you can do to score higher in the areas that you are not scoring as high on. And the reason I think that is important, especially if you are dealing with an addict, is if you are not taking care of yourself, you are not going to be able to help the other person. Alexis, if it's okay, I'm just going to run directly into the last couple of things I was supposed to talk about, unless you want to.
Well, I mean, I would love for Christine to maybe add in some.
Sure.
I'm sure that she also has good information about self-care, and then I forgot to ask her opinion as far as reporting as well. So since she's
great, let me just hit on the reporting, because that's important for everyone to know that there is Supreme Court Rule 106.5 sub 3 that provides for privilege of contacting regarding an individual, LCL, the State Bar, Office of Bar Counsel. And it says individuals who make a good faith report to LCL or N.L.A.P, the Board of Governors, Bar Council, staff coordinator agents, or employees of the LCL or N.L.A.P program shall be absolutely immune from civil liability for any activities related to the LCL or N.L.A.P program, including but not limited to making referrals to a counselor, therapist, medical, psychological, or behavioral health care provider. No action may be predicated upon the filing of a good faith report with LCL or N.L.A.P program for any action taken in connection with such filing. So I would say take a look at it. That's again, Supreme Court Rule 106.5. And basically, every call that's made to LCL is confidential. If someone calls, Joe Smith was in court and seemed under the influence, I'm going to say, I can keep this confidential unless you want me to let them know you said something. I might take a couple days so that they can't put two and two together. We go to every length possible to maintain confidentiality for anyone who calls in. And then regarding self-care, Al-Anon is a really good component to folks who are getting into recovery because it's a family disease. The alcoholic or addict goes and gets recovery. They come back to the home. They're behaving different. No one knows how to handle it. And then it's quite common that the person with the substance use disorder will go back out because they can't deal with being in the same place they were in and stay into recovery. So it is a family disease. I say, a good idea to get therapy as a family unit and to go to Al-Anon. And I'm sure folks here have experienced that. It is a wonderful program that teaches about self-care because it's the old flight oxygen mask. Put your oxygen mask on before you try to help someone else. You may actually be doing a disservice if you're trying to help in the interim. Your life is messed up. The kids aren't getting fed, and it's a bad situation. So, and I would say meditation, getting out if you like the outdoors, doing something to get out of the problem and into a different solution.
Absolutely. And then there's also like Alateen for teenagers, also, children's of, I can't remember the children's of alcoholics and, those kinds of things as well. So adult children of alcoholics, I think is what it is. So for people who have, are adults and had alcoholic families or, families that were neglectful or those kinds of things as well. And in the resources, there are websites and phone numbers and online meetings and things like that in the resources list. So another thing, of course, that's really, I think, important, with dealing with addicts and really just in yourself and with other addicts is boundaries, So how does that play into this? Judge, you want to comment?
So I think the first thing is you have to understand the 3 C's, and this is what they hammer into when you go to any type of 12-step program is you didn't cause this disease. You can't cure this disease and you can't control this disease. It's not yours. It lives outside of you. You didn't cause it. You can't cure it and you can't control it. And once you come to terms with that, it will help you set up those boundaries. Now, what do those boundaries look like? Those boundaries might look like complete detachment. That might look like not talking to the person. That might look like, kicking them out of your house, or kicking them out of your firm, or whatever it is that those boundaries are that are appropriate to be set up. And only you can figure that out after some proper self-reflection and determining what you need to do. And you should detach with love. And here's the difficulty with this is that when you have an addict, especially someone who is in your immediate family, a sibling, a parent, a husband, a wife, whatever it might be, when you continue to live with this person, it's not just sadness for them. There's anger and resentment that builds up. And that anger and resentment is like a poison that will eat at you and will destroy you from the inside out. And so it's important for you to set up those boundaries. Remember, there's no point in talking to an addict when they're using because you can't reason with dope. You can't reason with booze. There's nothing there. It's like talking to a wall. They will drag you down to their level and then beat you with experience, right? So it's you can argue around in circles, or you can detach with love. And that's the more appropriate way to do it, both to protect yourself and also to protect the long-term relationship with the addict. You can seek intervention for them, but they have to want help. And I think that as judges who have criminal cases, this is our balancing act, right? Is figuring out, is this person ready to get help? And I'm going to offer it to them, or are they not ready just quite yet? You can't help an addict unless they are absolutely ready to get their help themselves. And sometimes that means rock bottom, and sometimes it doesn't. You will know up to some point, but intervention only works if they're in a place that they're prepared to get help. And then also, do your research in advance. And so I would urge you to go and look at the materials that we've provided to you. The last 2 pages there's a group for everything. There is a group for, I don't even know, Cocaine Anonymous. I didn't even realize that was a thing, but there's a specific group for that. There are hundreds of organizations, and we've compiled the ones that should touch upon generally everything in Southern Nevada, as well as hospitals. Print that out, keep it handy, because then when you have an issue, you know immediately where to go to. And we tried to keep it short so you could do it as a front to back and just keep it at your desk. If you have those facilities, those treatment options available, outpatient help and treatment available, the phone numbers for lawyers concerned for other lawyers, the phone numbers for the state bar available and handy, you're not panicked and you're not feeling overwhelmed when you feel like you're ready to help this individual. There are resources available to you. And of course, I'm happy to help in any way, shape, or form. So please reach out to me. This is sort of my passion project. So if you ever need to reach out to me, I know Christine is constantly telling people to call her. So please reach out to us. This is our passion. We are happy to help, and take care of yourself. More, even if you don't have an addict, take care of yourself. It's important in this day and age for us to do that.
Absolutely. All right, well, we are right at our 1 o'clock, and I think I won't speak for everyone, but I probably could and say that, Maria and Ling and I as well, if anyone in this group or that sees this video, wants to speak to anyone, you could also call us, and we will, zero judgment about anything. I have been through a lot of my own life, and you know what I mean? And I know from personal experience that Ling is the same. And Maria, I don't know her as well, but I know that she has mentioned the same during our conversations. We all want to be resources to all of you. So we are at 1 o'clock. So if anyone has to leave, of course you can. I will stick around, and any panelists that want to stick around to ask questions or anything. I guess want to note in the comments, there was a question about programming and funding through S.N.A.W.A for inpatient recovery. And Christine had just commented that there aren't any funding programs through the state bar, but there is the no cost assessment under the S.N.A.W.A program if you so prefer, and it's not directed there by Office of Bar Counsel. Health insurance may pay, but it depends on the company. Finally, there is a treatment center here, Landmark Recovery, that may be able to work with attorneys in financing treatment. So as part of the materials, there is all the information about Lawyers Concerned for Lawyers and the Nevada Lawyers Assistance Program as well. And it has all the links and different things on their from the websites from the state bar to make sure that everyone has those resources. So again, if anyone forgot to put their bar number, name and bar number in the chat, please do that. Thank you guys, everyone, for the comments and the commentary and everything. So yeah, if anyone wants to open up their muting or anything, you're welcome to do that. So, all right.
I just want to say one thing. Thank you to Judge Roohani, Maria, and Ling. It's amazing to see the growth and the awareness of issues regarding mental health and substance use disorders, and the big barriers, as evidenced in that article by Hazel and Betty Ford, were first of all awareness, education, and stigma. And it is so encouraging to have this open, frank conversation. And I just want to thank everybody. And if you have any questions, like Alexis said, reach out to any of us. We need to change the culture that we live in this profession, from one of going 90 miles an hour to balance.
I guess I will say that I think one of the things that we all talked about when we were preparing for this is that it was important for us to be vulnerable with you, so you will feel comfortable being vulnerable, and destigmatizing this very, very important issue that the longer we sweep it under the rug, the harder it's going to be for us to deal with it. So it's not, what I will say is I don't think it's easy for any of us to talk about our own personal experiences. I typically sit and cry when I, think about the relationship that I had with my brother for very many years. It's hard and it's emotionally draining. But if my difficulty can make it easier for even one person, then I'm happy to share it. And if I'm, if we have to have a deeper conversation, and I'm happy to be vulnerable if it will encourage you to be vulnerable, and take care of yourself, because we have to take care of each other, especially in this crazy world.
Thank you so much for saying that, Judge. Maria, do you have any last comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, a lot of times people ask, well, I don't know anybody with this issue. What can I do? What's my role here as a member of the profession? And my response is kind of twofold. First of all, you don't always know that you don't know somebody with one of these issues, whether it's your colleague or perhaps your opposing counsel if you're a litigator. The second thing I would say is, we discussed a little bit about what's going on with the courts. And for a lot of us practitioners, some of that is a bit out of our control and our purview. But I can tell you one thing you can do is be kind to one another. If your opposing counsel asks you for an extension, give it to them. Don't make them explain what the good cause is to you, right? Our state courts, and Judge Roohani can correct me if I'm wrong, but unless you're abusing extensions, our state courts routinely sign stipulations and orders for continuances, right? Be kind to one another. Don't make the other side explain. It could be a very personal issue, could not be a very personal issue, but unless it prejudices your client, and mere delay is not prejudice, give the continuance.
That's basic civility, but I think there's now an order about it that came out about depositions, right? Which is a whole nother CLE that we could do, right? So again, thank you everyone very much for being here today. And we don't want to keep anyone longer than we need to. So again, if anyone has questions, please do feel free to reach out to any one of us, and we're happy to connect. So. Thank you, everyone. I think there's a ton of great comments, so I hope everyone on the panel is able to read them. I really appreciate everyone who's able to attend today. We had over 30 people that attended, so it was really great to have everyone here. So
we appreciate you coming, so we didn't have to talk to ourselves and each other again.
Although
we don't love these people, but they've already heard us talk, so.
We would have done that too, I suppose, if we had to. But
that would have been fun too.
It would have been fun too.
Well, Alexis, you did a great job moderating and keeping us on track. You hit everything on the agenda. I am amazed. So, way to go.
I think I'm getting a reputation for being on time and precise. I got similar comments after our judicial candidate forum that because we ended early and we got everybody to be able to speak. So it was trying to pride myself on that. We have very valuable time. So I'm glad we were able to get all that. I think we really hit both sides, the ethics and the substance abuse, which is what we got half credit for each. So it was a really awesome presentation. Everyone, please do check S.N.A.W.A.com for future events and registration and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to go ahead and sign off now. Thank you guys so much.
Somebody put in the chat that there was something on August 4th and they didn't see it on our webpage.
Yes, I messaged her privately that I did ask about that. That is the August 4th the legislative update that we'll be having in person, and it will be up on the website very soon to register for that. So,
thank you, Alexis.
Yes, of course. Thank you guys. Thanks so much.